There was this moment where my newborn baby needed to be fed. It was probably around 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And it was my second child. However, it was the first time that I'd experienced a newborn baby at home because my first baby didn't come home until she was about 10 weeks old. And so everybody assumed that because it wasn't my first, I knew exactly what I was doing. And I didn't need any help. Even the nurses in the hospital were all like, "You've done this before. You don't need to know. I don't need to explain this to you again." I remember like freaking out, like, "No, I don't know. I actually don't know." And going home with my second board, I was actually petrified. And my partner only had, I think it was like 3 days off, maybe. He had to get back to work because one of his workmates were going on holidays and one of them had to be there at all times. And, I was pissed. I felt so alone. And it's something that, throughout, the last 16 years is, I think about it often because that moment where it was 2, 3 a.m. and my daughter was hungry, no one else could feed her because I was breastfeeding and I was there, it was dark, and I was sitting on the couch. And I remember looking down at my daughter and just feeling so resentful that I was so alone and I was the sole person who was responsible for her. And in that moment, it just changed everything because I felt so much frustration and I'm going to say hate. I felt hate. And I looked down at this innocent baby who I was breastfeeding and I was having all of these horrible feelings and thoughts towards not just her, but also her. And just remembering that everything that I was feeling, I was transferring it onto this child. And so I woke up the next morning and and I made some changes in how I did things and to get some control back. And I share this with you because there's so many times where we experience such a common thing that, you know, billions of women have experienced this, right? It's how can I get this wrong when literally we're put on this earth, like where our bodies are made to breed? How can I get this wrong when billions of other people have done it before me, will do it after me? And, we feel very alone in these things that we believe that should be very natural to us. And I wanted to give it some airtime today because there's been so many times throughout, I know, my life. And really, I would love for you to reflect and do some self-inquiry as to what have been the times in your life whereby you feel like it's something that you should just nail, that you should be really good at, and you're not, or you're struggling and it's hard and it hurts and it feels like the world is against you, but also as well as you feel like you're doing it so wrong that you don't even want to enter the world because you don't want the world to see that you're doing it wrong either, right? And so, this is such a, it was such a powerful moment for me because, you know, it was enough for me in that moment to take drastic changes. And it was, and I did things that, a lot of people were judging me for at the time. A lot of people were saying, she was asleep. Just for, an example and some context is, my daughter, she would sleep all day and she was awake all night. And I had a 2-year-old. And so I would literally I'd be up all night and close the door to my baby. She's finally asleep. And I would literally open the other door. The doors were side by side in our place at the time. And I'd open up the door to my toddler, and she was up for the morning. So then I was up for the day. And this went on for weeks. And so, you know, and a lot of people would say that, because I went through this transition time where then I would keep my daughter awake during the day. And so I had to train her to sleep at night. And a lot of people would say, don't wake a sleeping baby. You're cruel. Why would you do this? It felt like it was so extreme. And, and I think that there's so many times in our lives where, you know, even though the world and the people in our lives are looking back at us, thinking that we're crazy and why are we doing this? Why would we do this? Not understanding that perhaps it's our sanity. Perhaps it's something that we know that we have to do. There's so many reasons why we have to take action. And this is the beautiful thing about, when surrounding yourself with, with people who get it, with people who understand you and and won't judge you, so really seeking out communities that are there for you, that will support you. And no matter where you live, there is always a community that is set up. It may take some research, it may take some googling, but there's research, there's people there, there's communities there that can help you. And I think that it's something that's so simple that we forget that, and that we feel afraid of because we don't want to expose, this level of vulnerability of, because we feel like that we're not crushing it and we're really, probably doing the opposite here. But I really felt called to just pop in and share this experience with you. Because as soon as I did that, as soon as I felt this resentment and feeling so alone, I was able to wake up the next day and put some really solid changes in place that was really going to help me take my power back and take my flame back. And when I speak to the wildfire woman, is really about there's so many times throughout our life as a woman that we feel alone, that we feel judged, that we feel like we're getting it wrong. And so we use it as a reason is to not seek help or to stay inside and to not speak about it because, we don't want the world to know that we're, feeling like we're really stuffing it up. And and being okay with that, and just recognizing and understanding that it takes one thing. It takes one thing. It takes one choice. It takes one action. And we get to do good. We get to do better. We get to make better choices because what we don't fix, our kids inherit. And even though we feel like sometimes that we're alone, we get to do it differently. We get to do it differently. And I think that is a really beautiful thing. And so when we speak to the wildfire woman, it's really about recognizing and remembering your fire, recognizing that you're wild, that you're not meant to be tamed. And this idea of right and wrong and how we do things is perception. And it can be largely based on a belief system that isn't conducive to us feeling good, for us feeling amazing. And so our wildfire is really the foundation of us feeling alive again. Because when we feel alive, when we take the reins and we begin to fight for ourselves, and that's what I did in that moment when I woke up that morning after feeding my second born, is I restoked my wildfire. And I started fighting for myself. I started fighting for my happiness and my joy and my aliveness. And I made sure I had props around me and support around me from people who I knew that wouldn't judge me. And I reclaimed my fire because if I couldn't do this for me, and this is another thing, is so many times as we sacrifice ourselves as mothers, and yet in order for us to be there for our kids, but everything that I was doing, she was feeling anyway. She was going to be the byproduct of that. And I knew that. And there was no way I was going to transfer that onto her. And so we're forever changing. And this wildfire is really that reminder of the importance for you to fight for yourself, for you to choose you. And you're not broken or flawed or behind or wrong. It's the system that is, and us organizing a new ecosystem for ourselves, one that's conducive for a life that actually we want. We want. That's not based on everybody else's opinions, assumptions, thoughts, beliefs, right? And we can step into what I call our overflow era. And if you need help to do that, I've got a free resource that is absolutely amazing that will extract your brilliance and teach you how and what your overflow era looks like in a way that's actually unique and completely personalized and tailored to you. Alrighty, I'll talk to you really soon and you'll find that link below. Bye, everybody.